Good evening, everybody, and hi, Sal. My name is Kareem, and I'm a member of the team at Rise within Schmidt Futures. We are so excited to have you here with us today for this edition of our Ask Me Anythings. Um,
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
of course. So, by way of introduction, Sal is the CEO and founder of Khan Academy, which is a nonprofit. Um, it's a nonprofit educational organization that offers free lessons in math, science, humanities, in multiple languages, as well as tools for parents and teachers. Which means that if you've ever looked for extra math help, ever, odds are you've ended up watching his videos. Sal is actually the reason I passed middle school geometry when I grew up in Madagascar. So I think it speaks to the incredible breadth and scope of your videos. If I, in my remote island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, watched your videos, it speaks to your to incredible capacity of building this incredible organization from scratch. So Sal, thank you once again for joining us. Before
No,
we
thanks for having
start,
me.
I think it's worth that we review the format of this AMA. Just as a reminder, this AMA is for you, the Rise Global community. We're going to be asking the questions that Rise applicants and people within the Rise community at large have pre-submitted when they registered. We'll also ask the questions that you've submitted in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen within Zoom. Many of you are Rise Challenge applicants. As you know, at the end of each phase, you will have to submit a video before moving on to the next one. Over the last few days, we've received many questions about how to present yourself on video. You've also asked for guidance and advice on what to include in your video submissions. And today we're going to answer those questions and more. If you're not participating in the Rise Challenge, don't worry. This AMA is all about leveling up your skills. And if you're 15 to 17 years old, you can apply for the second cohort of Rise later this year for the opportunity to receive a lifetime of benefits. So Sal, what do you think? Should we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we've received a number of questions from the Rise Global community about the founding of Khan Academy. We have people asking left and right how you got started, what was inspiration, what got you to start. Could you say more?
Yeah, and I can give you a short, medium, or long version of that. But I'll give the medium. I've always been fascinated by education just as a lever in general. Growing up, I think all of you probably as young people, you're always thinking, how do you can make a dent in the universe? And you look at all of the different problems that exist, whether it's climate change or wealth inequality or gender inequality or conflicts. When you really peel the onion, a lot of those get either significantly helped or even solved by the issue of education. And education really is, just how do you up level what's going on in everyone's brains? It's the simplest way I think about it. So I've always been interested by that question. And I found myself in high school when I was many of y'all's age, tutoring peers, getting insights about this process. When I was in college, I kept being drawn to not just education, but the intersection of how even technology and education, how technology could be used to help people learn at their own time and pace, get in a scalably way, reach people when they might have access to other forms of instruction or practice. And then you fast forward, my first job was in tech. I came out to Silicon Valley after undergrad, and then it was the late 90s, and I participated in the whole dot-com boom and bust. And
I've
then
heard of it.
when that collapsed, I go to business school. I find out I really like finance. Out of business school, it's now 2003, I find myself at a very small hedge fund in Boston. It was me and my boss, essentially. And then a year out of that, I was getting married, and my family from New Orleans, which is where I was born and raised, were visiting me in the Northeast. And it just came out of conversation that my 12-year-old cousin Nadia was having trouble with math. And when I asked Nadia about it, she was having trouble with unit conversion. They put her into a slower math class because she had bombed a placement exam. And I knew that could have huge implications. What track you're in middle school could have huge implications. What happens in high school, college, or beyond. So I told Nadia, when you go back to New Orleans, I'm up for tutoring you if you're up for it. And she was. And so I tutored her every day after work. We would use a speaker, get on a conference line. There was no video conference at the time, but then we figured out ways to see each other's writing using. I think at the time we were using Yahoo Instant Messenger, this archaic tools, and slowly but surely I got Nadia first of all, her self-confidence had to be rebuilt. She got unit conversion. She got caught up with her class, a little ahead of her class. At that point, I became a tiger cousin. I called her school and I said, I really think Nadia Rahman should be able to retake that placement exam. They said, who are you? I said, I'm her cousin. And they let her. And then I was kind of hooked. Small part intervention on me. I was able to connect with family. So then I start tutoring her younger brothers, and word spreads in my family. Free tutoring is going on. Before I know it, about 10, 15 cousins every day after work I'm now working with. And I saw a pattern that I saw, frankly, even before I started tutoring Nadia, which is the reason they were having difficulty was they had gaps in their knowledge that had accumulated over time. So the reason why they're having trouble in algebra wasn't because algebra is hard, not because they're not bright. It's because that equation involves exponents and dividing decimals, and they actually did not master dividing decimals from 5th grade, and they did not master exponents from 6th or 7th grade. And so I started writing software for them to get
Wow.
practice and feedback. And for me as their tutor to understand, and it was just a fun thing for me because I wasn't coding in my day job, but I love to code, to work on this project. And in the back of my mind, I was like, look, if it just helps my cousins, I'm happy. I don't have to get too grandiose about it. But I did know, look, there's something cool about software that if it works for one person, it could work for a billion. And so I started working on that. And it was in 2006, I was showing off this project at a dinner party. And my friend, the host, said, well, this is cool, Sal, but how are you scaling your lessons? And I said, no, that's hard. It's hard to do with 15 cousins what I was doing with one. And he said, why don't you record some of your lessons as videos and upload them onto YouTube for your family? And I initially said, that's a horrible idea. YouTube is for cats playing piano. It is not for serious learning. But I went home that weekend, got over the idea that it was not my idea, and I gave that a shot. And I just started doing what my cousins kept asking me about. And so, kind of the frequently asked questions and explanations. So I kept doing those. After a month, my cousins famously told me they liked me better on YouTube than in person. And so I kept going, and it soon became clear that people who are not my cousins, I guess a middle school Kareem was maybe one of those early people, and they were sending me letters saying, "Look, this is the reason I was able to pass my algebra class. This is the reason I'm able to go back to college. This is the reason why my kids are able to engage. This is why, as an adult learner, I'm able to do X, Y, and Z." So I was hooked. By 2009, there were a few 100,000 people using it. I had trouble, frankly, focusing on my day job because it felt like there was such an opportunity here. And so that's when I set this up as a not-for-profit organization, mission free world-class education for anyone, anywhere, and quit my day job, just kind of hoping that the philanthropic community would recognize that the social return on something like this could almost be infinite. And, I think anytime you do anything entrepreneurial, you need to have a little bit of that delusional optimism. So you take the leap, but as soon as you take the leap, you quickly discover that the world does not recognize your genius as quick as as you think they should. And it was a hard year. We were living off of our savings. Our first child had just been born. Um, I would wake up in the middle of the night, like, what have I done to my career? This is
Wow.
crazy. But by 2010, a couple of folks came out of the woodwork. It came out of the woodwork that Bill Gates was using Khan Academy. I'm happy to tell that story on how that, but between that and it came out of the woodwork that Google, a lot of the executives were using Khan Academy with their own children or even for themselves. And so by fall of 2010, after, it was one of those things where, my self-esteem was at a low point entering into 2010 and early 2010. I'm like, what have I done? But by the summer and fall, all of a sudden, two major institutions, Google and the Gates Foundation, and even more importantly, the stakeholders, Bill Gates, Eric Schmidt, Larry, and Sergey, were like, we believe in this thing. And I was just like, good, because I need your help.
You were we were far ahead of the curve, and I'm so glad that Nadia found you and you found Nadia. Just in terms of ripples in the ocean, I mean, ripples in a lake creating, what is it, waves in the ocean. That is precisely that. You did say that if it worked for one cousin, it worked for a billion people, and it looks like it did. If I'm not mistaken, about 1.7 billion people have watched your videos, or at least your videos have received 1.7 billion views, which is astounding. I'd like to touch on something you mentioned earlier also, which is the confidence that your cousin began to demonstrate. Do you think that is part of the secret sauce? Do you think that is something that you try to impart through your videos, either directly or indirectly, just sharing this confidence through your videos?
Hopefully, I'm curious from you and other people who've listened, but I think it was a blessing that this started as a family project. That in that first content, even in that first software, I was like, who's the user? It's my cousins. This is a, and because of that, especially in the video content, I was very, I care about I cousin care about everyone, but of course I care about my cousins, and I think what's going on in your mind and your motivation actually does come out when you communicate anything. Humans are very sensitive to tone and all sorts of implicit signals, and I think those people who are not my cousins who are using the content, either the software or the video, kind of felt that there's something about this that's different than what would come from a large publisher. It feels more comfortable. It feels less stressful. It feels a little bit quirkier, but at the same time. Um, I think one of the secret sauces is I'm very transparent with my thinking, to a fault. Sometimes I get in trouble telling random strangers my whole life, like, yeah, this happened, and that, like my mom was like, shh, don't tell them that, like that's our family secret. But that's good when you're trying to teach math or science or other things, because also when people are trying to learn something, the experts will often skip steps or just or not even want to show their own thinking because it might make them look not as smart or think they won't look it. But I'm happy to share all my thinking, and so I also do the Khan Academy content in real time. I don't read a script. It's me thinking in real time. And I feel like people, and I share every thought I think. And so I think people appreciate that too. And I tell everyone at Khan Academy, as we grow and scale, whether you're making videos, whether you're writing articles, writing exercises, or writing software, treat the user not as someone who is less than you. Treat the user as someone who you respect. They might be a different age and they might have currently a different ability level in certain skills, but you have to treat them and talk to them as if someone you respect. And I think the recipient of that information feels that sense of respect, and then that lets them be more open to the learning.
This is so key, and I think that's excellent advice that anybody on this call can actually take in and learn from. So we have a question from Ingrid, who's actually from Mexico, and perhaps you can answer her question. She would like to know about the difficulties that you faced as Khan Academy grew. At which point did you realize that you needed help, and what sort of skill did you have to demonstrate to steer the company, the academy, where it is today?
Oh yeah, I mean all sorts of, the early. I've probably erased some of the difficulties from my brain, but y'all heard the initial story. I think the early difficulties were balancing a job and a significant passion project, for lack of a better word, and then and then knowing when to take the leap. I think was created no shortage of angst in my life in 2007, 2008, and 2009, and then even in 2010. Once 2000 fall of 2010 came, and all of a sudden Google and Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt and all of these very high profile people, that was both exciting, but that had its own form of stress where all of a sudden I felt like I was in the middle of a hurricane, and all sorts of people started to come out of the woodwork. And I started saying, okay, are they reaching out to me because they want to help Khan Academy, or are they reaching out to me because they're trying to get closer to Bill Gates or Eric Schmidt or Google or all
It
of
can be
this?
so tricky.
So you definitely go into this mode where you're like, okay, who do I need? Where do I need help? Who has those capabilities? And who, frankly, would I trust with my life? Because I do view Khan Academy as my life's work, and I didn't want it to get into quote the wrong hands or the wrong intent. And so the first person I called was a colleague of mine, Shantanu, who was I know him for many years. I first met him when we were 15 years old. He beat me at a math competition in Louisiana. Then he was my freshman roommate at MIT. And then, we're like brothers. And he, at the time, he was working as a consultant for McKinsey, and I think the travel was getting to him. And as soon as I found, after that first meeting with some of these major stakeholders, I called up Shantanu and I was like, I need help. I want to keep doing some of what I'm doing, but the ambitions here are big. We want to translate into the languages of the world. We want to cover all the subjects and grades. We want to create an exercise platform that adapts. We want to create teacher tools, and we need to create an organization with management and comp plans and office space and all of this. So I immediately hired, and I asked, can you help me out? Even for 2 years, it would mean a lot, to help build out the org. So Shantanu joined as, you can kind of view him as the founding chief operating officer,
I see.
which is, that role of chief operating officer can mean a lot of different things at a lot of different organizations. But in this capacity, he really helped me build out the initial org. And then there were some volunteers who were helping. So I initially brought them on because I was like, they were helping even before Khan Academy was validated by some of these famous people. So I know their intent is there, and they're incredible people. So Ben Kamens, Jason Rosoff were kind of our founding engineer, founding designer, and that was huge because those first few people, they really set the direction going forward. And then I could go into thousands of things where we had to pivot here or
Of
there.
course.
There's always a tension between focus versus ambition. There's always, um, as an organization grows, you get more capacity, but you also have a little bit more bureaucracy and more management overhead. And balancing that is still something that I'm constantly thinking about. So yeah, I could go into a lot more detail, but there's a lot. There's 5 things on my plate right now that I'm like, what should we do?
Well, I'm curious about the vision that you had. So as a team grew, as a project grew, was the vision something that you had fixed beforehand and knew this was the direction you wanted to take the project towards, or was it something that was more flexible, more malleable, um, and again more adaptable in some capacity? What was it?
I got to say the mission and the vision have been unusually they have stood the test of time. This mission, free world class education for anyone anywhere. That's a big statement with a lot in it, but we still stand by that and believe that even more. Our vision of can we create all the K through 14 materials, actually pre-K through 14, going through like the core of college, across subjects and grades, uh, in all the major languages of the world. Can we do it in a way that personalizes to the needs of the student and engages them while also giving tools so the teachers can help the student engage? Can we one day connect that to other learning, to other opportunities in life, jobs, internships, higher education? um yeah, we've that's still the vision. That's still the mission. And intentionally, a mission and a vision should never be anything that you just like completely are able to check off, but
Of
we made a
course.
lot of progress. Yeah, 12 years ago, it would have been completely delusional, but in math, we're pretty close already on a lot of that. In science, we're doing a major push as we speak. We have hundreds of thousands of teachers using us. We have 100 over 100 million students coming every year to the platform. We're working with ministers of education. With that said, we still have a long way to go. 100 million is nice, but there's probably on the order of 4 billion people who could be benefiting from Khan Academy right now. So we need to figure out how do we reach those folks. And there's constantly new parts of the vision that I view part of my job is to protect that vision, not let it get too small so that we don't stop swinging for the fences. So, one of the things I'm excited about Rise, uh, I view this as part of the broader vision. Hello World, which many of y'all are using as the app to apply, I view that as it's great if it's going to work for Rise, and hopefully, I'd love everyone's feedback. But what if this was the new way to get into to get jobs, to get into kind of build your portfolio of things. There's a project as soon as COVID hit called schoolhouse.world, where maybe overusing the word world, but schoolhouse.world, which is peer-to-peer tutoring. So it's a place where we're able to give not just the asynchronous help that Khan Academy can do, but also synchronous help through tutoring. So, you can get office hours, you can get point help, or we're going to introduce things called cohorts. And it's also a way for you to give back to tutor other people. And then that is leading to opportunities for certification. University of Chicago is accepting kids based on their tutor reputation and their certification of knowledge on schoolhouse.world. So it's happening, but it's there's still a long way to go.
On the subject of tutoring, it sounds like, I mean, without a doubt, you are the guru at sharing tips and advice on present yourself on under your best lights. And because the Rise Challenge requires students to, I mean, applicants from all over the world to submit video submissions describing their projects. We also have a few questions from the audience who would like to know from you what type of advice that you can share with them. The first one is from Mehak from Eswatini, asking, what is the most important thing to keep in mind when you're presenting your idea or opinion?
Yeah, and I think this is true whether you're making a video, whether you're giving a talk, a presentation. It's to be your authentic self. And, I think it's very tempting to try to write a perfect script. And then, because you're like, okay, if I write a perfect script and if I read that, then I'm going to hit all my points. I'm going to say just the right words. But the human being who's listening to you is just like, he's just reading a script. Like, I'm not connecting with that. Instead, it's good for you to, think about, okay, what are the key points I want to get across? But then just press record on the camera and be yourself. I saw some people asking about eye contact. What you can do is if you can even look at a video of yourself while you're recording and put it close to the top center of your screen so that it looks like you're making eye contact, because then your eyes are looking at you, but they're actually looking, it also looks like it's looking at the camera. So I think that combination of eye contact and speaking authentically from the heart and actually thinking about it versus reading a script makes a huge difference. I mean, I think we can all point to politicians. We know when they're reading off of a teleprompter or when they're not. And we know how much more effective it is when they are speaking from their heart. Whether or not we believe them, whether or not we like what they're saying, we say, okay, that's them. That's what they're really saying. And so, as Rise application, and I actually think what Rise is doing for students is really valuable, because I think representing yourself on video is going to be the future for everything. I think we're just at the very early stages of it. So if you can get on a video, be your authentic self, and smile. We often imagine we smile when our brain says, hey, you're happy, but it goes the other way around. I mean, I encourage everyone to do it right now. Like, literally smile. Like, it feels unnatural, but it makes you a little bit happier than you were like before you did this.
It feels nice.
It feels nice. And so do that. I actually, sometimes when I'm having a bad mood, I got like, something messed up at home, or, I realized like my tax bill was higher than I expected, but I have to be on, I have to talk to someone, or I have to fundraise. Like, before, I literally do this. Like, before I get on the video, or even before I get on the phone, they don't even see my face, but it's going to come out in the tone. If I'm smiling, it forces me to be happy, and then they're going to hear it through my voice. So do that, be yourself, have fun in what you're doing. The worst that's going to happen, especially if you're doing video, is you press record again. But every time, just be your authentic self. It's okay to have a few, hems and haws and ums, as long as it's your authentic self versus having the perfect thing and people know you're reading it.
On a similar note, how do you think body language can be used to enhance your video? This is a question that we got from Celine, who comes from Turkey.
Once again, it's being comfortable and your authentic self. And some people use their hand a lot. That's great. Some people don't.
So whichever feels more natural.
Whatever feels comfortable. There is tips that I've heard from other people in this public speaking world where, putting your crossing, this makes you feel very closed. Try to be open, expansive. And I do think that is true if you're speaking on a stage. Like, the more that you can, and it actually builds confidence. Many people have probably seen the TED Talk on power poses. Like, certain physical positions actually will make you more confident. And so when you are expansive and you're doing this, you will feel more confident, more in control of the situation, than if you're doing this. You're not going to feel quite as confident and in control of the situation. But once again, I think you can do you the best. And it's not trying to be like Sal or like someone else. It's be your authentic self when you are happy, when you're comfortable, and when you genuinely care about what you're saying and when you're genuinely excited. I will not make a Khan Academy video unless I am genuinely interested and excited about what I'm about to talk about. Because if you're not excited about it, the person listening for sure is not going to be excited about it.
It's always the case. That's what happens for sure. This is actually one of the concerns that you've just addressed that was raised by Vimbai from Zimbabwe is, how can I overcome video camera shyness? And you just answered that question. I'm also
seeing, just get started. It's just practice. Just remind, meditation never hurts, because then you realize like not much in material reality really should be phasing me. And so, but it's a good skill, because once you get comfortable with it, you'll feel comfortable with a lot of things in life.
I should also point out, and I'm looking at this from the Q&A in the webinar, that if I pronounce the name correctly, Jalen Patel is on the webinar. He is a computer science tutor working at your organization, schoolhouse.world, and he says hello.
Good to hear that. It's a great place for folks to tutor. You'll tutor folks from all over the world.
We actually received a few more questions from the webinar, actually, from the Q&A. Akil actually would like to know, how do you try and motivate yourself when you feel down or not having a good day? What do you do to lift your spirits up?
Yeah, and I do think I'm pretty good at deluding myself when needed. So I do have some habits that I've developed that I found, first of all, set up my day well, so I'm less likely to fall into a funk. So to me, it's to get some early wins early in your day. So I religiously make my bed, and I make it really well. Like, I go into fancy hotels, and it's like they don't know how to make their beds. Like, I am a world-class bed maker. And I was, there was I think he was a former head of the U.S. Marines who gave a speech at some military college, and he started the speech talking about the importance of making the bed. I'm like, yeah, me and him. he gets it. He gets it. And what that does is it gives you a win, a guaranteed win early in the day. And once you make that bed, you're like, I am someone who accomplishes things. And then you go to other things, get ready fast. Now, I try to do some like a 10-minute exercise. It might be a 1 mile run. It might be doing some push-ups, pull-ups, yoga. Try to do that. Also first thing in the morning before my day starts. I do take a cold shower, which is something that I've started doing in the last 3 years. And I view it as like a reboot of your brain, because you walk into that shower saying, oh, why did that happen at work? And oh, I'm really worried how this is going to happen. And you turn that on and you're like, what? What day is it? What? Like you're just reset, and you waste a lot less water because you get out of it quite fast. You know exactly how cold it is outside from your shower. But that, and actually there is some research. I encourage people to read about cold showers and mood. Apparently, cold
Wow.
showers are at least as effective as some of the most strongest antidepressants. So there's something there.
No idea.
And then I meditate, and meditation. Seriously, I now do half an hour a day, but even if you're able to do 5 minutes a day, especially in that morning time that's quiet before everyone wakes up, it just stills your mind, and you realize that all of those things that you're worried about, you're circulating, what people think of you, what's going to happen here, that you're like, I'm just going to take a break from it. And when you do, you realize it's not that important. It's not the end of the world. And even if it was the end of the world, so be it. Like my son, when he went to a piano recital, he was really stressing out. And I'm like, his name's Imran. I'm like, Imran, he's 12 now. I think he was 10 when we had this conversation. I'm like, Imran, it's a piano recital. Do your best. The outcome is what it is. It's not the end of the world. And then he's like, what if it is the end of the world? Like literally, what if the world ends? And I'm like, well, even there, what are you going to do about it now? Just accept it and enjoy your piano recital.
Wow. Sal, so we have three more questions before we conclude with this webinar. These are all questions that we've received from the Q&A down below. Thomas, for one, would like to know, according to you, which countries do you believe have the most forward-thinking national curriculum? He's from the United Kingdom, where he says they don't really address topics like personal finance and climate change, and he believes these are topics that should be taught more substantially. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the real answer is, if you're looking at a nationwide level, you don't have anyone who's really leaning into what you're talking about. Most of the courses that people are taking in high school, that most of the folks listening are taking, was decided by 10 university presidents in the United States in 1890, their committee of 10. And those have essentially become the global standard for courses everywhere. And some of them make sense, some of them make less sense. To the question, why not have personal finance? Why not have law? Why not have, I mean, we could make a list of other interesting things. And then there's, how do you experience it? Should it just be lecture and tests and things like that? Or should it be more hands-on? Should you have an opportunity to create things, make things? So I don't think any country has it like really figured it out. I do think the US, it definitely doesn't have it figured out either, but it has more pockets of variation, I would say. So the US, from what I have seen, there are some schools that none of us would want to go to. They're very red, but there are definitely pockets where they are giving the space for real entrepreneurship, for real exploration. I started a school, Khan Lab School, where this is what we really lean in on. And um, I think, in other countries, it might have even been hard to start a school like this. Because they said, wait, this doesn't fit the mold of what we expect. I'm like, it's okay, just trust me. Over here, I was shocked. California in the US is known for being a high regulatory state, especially if you want to build things or from an environmental point of view. But when I started Khan Lab School and I read the regulation, it says, as long as your building meets fire code, we expect that you're going to be held accountable by your parents, by the parents of the school, and you do what you want. And I'm like, great, because I have some ideas that are very different. So I do think, and look, I've always, in the US, there's a lot of hand wringing about, oh, where are we in PISA scores? And look at Finland, look at Singapore, look at these other. And
Always this
I always
comparison.
say, first of all, it's not a fair comparison. Finland is smaller than the Bay Area. Singapore is a city state. The US is a large, diverse country. Even China, you're really comparing to Shanghai. You're not comparing to China. Um, and really what we've had delegations, ministers of education from some of the top performing countries in the world come to Silicon Valley, come to our offices, come visit Khan Lab School and say, we have these great test scores, but our kids still aren't starting the next Google. Our kids still aren't starting the next Khan Academy. Our kids, like, what are we doing wrong? And I've said, you have to create a little bit of the culture of Silicon Valley in your school, where failure is not stigmatized. In most schools across the world, an F is like the mark of shame. But an F should be a sign that you tried something hard, it didn't work out, good for you, keep trying. That's what an F should be. In Silicon Valley, if you make a solid effort as an entrepreneur and you did a good job, but for whatever reason the business fails, it's not a mark of shame. It's a mark that good for you. You tried that, and people will still give you another chance. And we just have to have a school system that thinks a little bit more like that as well.
I was reading something along those lines recently that we don't, at least in schools worldwide, we don't really differentiate between two wrong answers. If, for example, the answer to a math question might be, 25. If your answer is 24 and is wrong, it's still less wrong than if you answered 25 million. And so we don't really distinguish between wrong answers. There's this relativity of wrongness that I think we don't really acknowledge. But on
But
that
wrong
note,
isn't bad, right? Like if almost like if someone's getting straight A's, hundreds, something's wrong, because that means they're not pushing themselves. Like anyone who's meeting all their goals is clearly staying too much in their comfort zone. They're not growing. Now, if you're getting all zeros, that's probably you're too far out of your comfort zone. You're in your panic zone. But there is some zone of proximal development, some learning edge where it's actually optimal. So getting things wrong should not be stigmatized.
I really like this question that sneaked out in the Q&A asked just a moment ago. The question is, I'm curious to know what is something you did not do as well as your peers before you started Khan Academy?
Oh, so much. I mean, as I mean, you know, I was I was on the wrestling team in high school, and my only wrestling trophy was highest GPA on the wrestling team. So I'll let that speak for itself. So I now consider myself more athletic than most 44-year-olds, but it's because I was not as athletic as most 14-year-olds when I just didn't have honestly exposure to a lot of organized sports and things like that. So that was definitely an area where only later in life did I start to really develop an interest and passion in it. Um,
This is brilliant.
Early on when I was in second grade, I was in speech therapy. I couldn't speak properly. So I don't want to make this a therapy
The
session.
irony of that.
I have a long list of things where I was definitely sub average.
Sal, we're almost nearing time actually, but one last question is something that I'd like to ask you. Again, this is a recurrent theme among the questions that we received, but what is one piece of advice that you could give the Rise Challenge participants? They're all working hard on their projects, which are all due April 1st. What is one piece of advice that you can share with all of them as they go home and finish their projects within the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, there's this concept, and the same concept appears in Stoic philosophy and Vedic philosophy and Buddhist philosophy, frankly, in all major schools of thought. And in Vedic philosophy, it's everything. The whole world is classified according to three aspects. There's truthful, kind of power dynamic, and then there's kind of I guess slovenly. And the truthful sattvic action is action that you take because you think it is right, but you don't get caught up with the outcome. Rajasic action is action you do because of the outcome. So when you're doing something because you're like, oh, this is going to give me a good grade, or this is going to make me, be better in some way, or I better do this, otherwise this bad thing is going to happen. That's Rajasic. And look, most of us, most of the time, are motivated by Rajasic. Tamasic is, oh, I'm doing this because I have to. I don't even want to do this. So someone's kind of pushing you. But most of us, most of the time, who are reasonably motivated, are doing Rajasic actions. We're saying, oh, I want to do this because if I do this, this awesome thing's going to happen that I really want. Or if I don't do this, this horrible thing's going to happen and I'm scared of that. So I better do it. If you do Rajasic action, it's a great recipe for stress. It's a great recipe for procrastination. It's a great recipe for anxiety, because when you're fixated on the outcome, you get paralyzed on the action. You're like, oh, I got to get it perfect. Otherwise, what if I don't get the Rise scholarship? My life is over. Your life is not over. Like, in fact, the best way to not do well on the Rise is to think like that, is to think that you have to get the Rise scholarship. Or if I don't do this, my life is over. The best thing, and I'm learning this, later in life, that many of the people watching, is to take a sattvic approach, a truthful approach. In Sanskrit, satya means truth. And that is what is right. Let me just do what I think is right. And the chips fall where they do. And I accept them. And then based on new information, I then do the next right thing. And so for those of y'all who are applying to Rise or applying to a scholarship or want to ask someone out to the prom, don't think about the outcome. Just say, what is right? Let me just take the action, do it, and then the chips fall where they do. And when you do that, you're going to find it incredibly liberating. You're going to have a lot more fun, and you're going to find that it's a lot easier to actually take the action. So it doesn't mean don't care about the outcome. You can desire an outcome, but don't become attached to the outcome. Say, yeah, I'd like it if that happened, but at least let me just try and see what happens. So if you take that through life, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot and not be too stressed. And I'm still working on myself, so I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, but it is, I think, the healthiest place to be.
No, that's truly wonderful advice. And to me, just reminds me of Rise itself, about how since we started Rise, there are thousands of students, thousands of teenagers all around the world who started projects to lift their communities in whichever capacity as possible. They might have heard of Rise, they might be doing it for Rise, but after hearing what you just said, I hope they will do it, continue doing it for the right reasons. Sal, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today, and we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to share your wisdom, your expertise, and your advice to myself, and the rest of the Rise global community. When it comes to the Rise Challenge participants, I would just like to remind you that the deadline for this current phase is April 1st. So make sure to get all your projects in by then. Sal, once again, we appreciate your time. And everybody else, we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thanks for having me, Kareem. Thanks,
Of
everyone.
course.
Nice chatting.